A film titled The Accountant from 2016 will tell the story about someone who suffers from a rare condition, but behind that deficiency, this kid or person has a wealth of advantages compared to a normal person in general. And without further ado, let's just get to it. The scene opens in a bar. The story is about to focus on a man with a pistol in his hand. He sneaks inside while a massacre is in progress, carried out by an unknown assailant. His intention was to make an arrest, but the man is paralyzed when the perpetrator suddenly appears from behind and shoves a pistol right against his head. Flashback to more than a decade ago. The story begins by showing a small boy named Chris and his younger brother, Braxton. Chris is diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a condition of unconventional sensory neural development. Despite a tendency for very high intelligence, his way of interacting, communicating, and behaving is clearly different from Braxton and other normal children in general.
Challenge. When it's yours. Problem.
My practice focuses on education.
For this reason, Chris is then brought by his parents to a neurocenter, a place for children with special needs, like this little girl, who are housed and treated for free. According to the local doctor, Chris will always need to stimulate his nerves to stay active and focused on one thing, such as repeating the nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy, when he accidentally loses a puzzle piece until the missing piece is found again. This is where Chris is now, a financial consulting service business named Christian Wolff Accounting. With his mastery of mathematics and accounting, Chris has transformed into a highly skilled accountant, ready to assist small to medium-sized business owners, such as a pair of bead artisans who are grateful for the service Chris has provided.
Well, make it 300 square feet. The company truck.
Shifting to the U.S. Department of the Treasury, we are introduced to a director of the Enforcement Division named King and a former police analyst named Medina, who is now applying for a similar position in the department. She almost leaves because King alludes to her dark past, but King only wants to ensure Medina's readiness to face the puzzle of the case they are currently handling. It turns out lately King has been investigating a mysterious figure called the Accountant. True to his moniker, this figure is proven to be a forensic accountant for some of the world's most dangerous criminal networks. Therefore, King firmly instructs Medina to focus solely on this one case.
At the end of the month, one of two things will have occurred. Resolution of this case, or we update your photo.
In fact, the accountant in question is none other than Chris himself. His discipline and focus are evident in the way he prepares his favorite meal, pancake with a fried egg and a topping of slightly burnt baked bacon. Besides that, he must also always keep his sensory nerves active by massaging a wooden stick on his calves, accompanied by very loud music and the blinding flashes of a strobe light. Standing calmly, Chris recalls his parents from the past, where their difference in opinion on how to raise him led to their divorce. His mother wanted Chris to be cared for in a special institution to keep his mind stable, but his father, an army officer, was committed to forging physical and mental toughness in both his sons with his own methods. All still in the effort to stimulate his brain nerves while also honing his hidden skills. The next day, Chris visits the home of the artisan couple from the other day. Besides being a pro in accounting, he is also apparently expert in marksmanship, which immediately shocks the couple.
Holy
Leaving there, Chris returns to a shop house that at first glance looks like an ordinary cheap commercial building. But once inside, we are quite astonished to see a caravan truck inside, which contains a vast amount of important items, such as a weapons cache, drawer slides storing money and gold bars, including a very famous abstract painting by Jackson Pollock. The harsh, borderless philosophy of the painting becomes an important element for his current mental stability. And again, Chris remembers the time when he was imprisoned in a super strict military jail. There, he was very close with an inmate named Francis, who was jailed for embezzlement of hundreds of millions of dollars. Chris gained a lot of inspiration from him. One could even say this is the initial history of Chris's foray into forensic accounting. Francis suggested Chris focus on the numbers and the financial truth of his clients alone, without judging them from a moral perspective.
Simeon Ivankov, 79 Primorsky Boulevard, Odessa.
A small piece of information we need to know here is that the military discipline imposed by his father since childhood molded Chris into a multi-talented soldier. However, his story in the military was short-lived, due to an incident that resulted in his father's death while attending the funeral of Chris's deceased mother. That incident caused Chris to be imprisoned on charges of assault and ethical violations.
Good night, son. Good night, Francis.
Thanks to the help of a mysterious caller named Justin, Chris is informed that someone is targeting him. To avoid further suspicion from that party, it is suggested that he find a clean client, meaning not from a criminal organization, fake diploma mafia, or other similar group.
We're too conspicuous in the kingdom. I vote Chicago.
Why?
There's an uptick in online chatter.
The client Justin refers to is Living Robotics, a cutting-edge technology company engaged in the development of robotic equipment. Currently, the company's financial administration is chaotic and there are indications that someone has embezzled their shares.
Go to work, Dreamboat.
As a first step, Chris holds a closed meeting with the core staff of Living Robotics, the manager named Rita and the treasurer named Eddie, who is suspected as the perpetrator after serving as treasurer for 15 years. After dealing with the two of them, Chris meets the director named Lamar. Through this brief conversation, Chris conveys that he will start working the next day.
Do your job. You let me know.
I'll start in the morning.
Switching to the Department of the Treasury office. As Medina begins investigating several names used by the accountant in his work, she uncovers an interesting fact about this figure. He always uses the names of great, world-renowned mathematician scientists. To find out who the accountant really is, Medina tries to identify his face sketch from CCTV footage. After further investigation by the FBI team, they find a match between the accountant and the perpetrator of the massacre of 9 gang members that occurred in the opening scene of the movie.
Killed Anthony Little Tony Bazzano.
Forensics list cause of death is blunt force trauma. Your boy kicked him in the head.
Not only that, they also find a recording of the conversation between the victim and the perpetrator during the incident. Believing this recording is the single strongest clue, Medina makes it the main focus of her investigation. After various stages of voice filtering, the result finally yields the words of the rhyme, Solomon Grundy. Although the meaning is not yet known, and they cannot confirm who the person is, at least this can lead them to the next clue. The next day, Chris is seen already in the meeting room of Living Robotics. The internal accountant named Dana looks exhausted due to the complexity and tangled nature of the company's financial flow. After the lunch break and a short conversation over breakfast, Chris returns to the meeting room to start his work. This is where we will finally witness firsthand the extraordinary work ethic of Chris. Supported by a brilliant mind and high-level focus, he is able to recreate dozens, even hundreds, of the company's journal books over the last 15 years, and manages to complete it in just one night. This immediately stuns and amazes Dana, seeing the journal notes covering the glass walls of the room, whereas for a single one-year period, Dana herself would spend months to complete it. But the most astonishing thing is that Chris is able to find a leak in the numbers of no small amount. The perpetrator is unknown, but one thing is certain: Rita wants the report made immediately.
Who did it? Best guess.
Guess.
You'll have a report from me.
Night falls. Eddie is shocked by the arrival of a mysterious man named Braxton Wolff, or Brax the Hitman. Let's just call Brax. It's unknown who Brax is or why he visits Eddie, but he suddenly intimidates Eddie and orders him to commit suicide by consuming a high dose of insulin. Eddie, whose wife is threatened with death, has no choice but to obey, rather than let his wife die at the hands of Brax.
I will have a Parker 45 in her brain pan. Make a decision, sir.
The next morning, in the meeting room, Chris is suddenly surprised by Lamar's decision, who asks the staff to erase all his journal notes. Not only that, Lamar also hands over Chris's payment and asks him to stop working. With the fact that Eddie, the treasurer, died last night, Lamar believes Chris no longer needs to conduct an investigation at his company.
Whatever he did is forgiven.
Please, let me finish, please.
Lamar's decision immediately raises a big question for Dana, as well as for Chris, who seems disappointed at being suddenly forced to stop halfway. Chris dislikes nothing more than leaving his work unfinished. So the anxiety Chris is currently experiencing does not disappear just by listening to music. Even all the therapy practices he usually does fail to make him feel better. As a result, Chris decides to go to the artisan's place to hone his shooting skill. After setting up 3 melons to be used as shooting targets, he recalls the time when his father took him on duty to Indonesia. Demand. He not only guided Chris and Braxton mentally, but also trained them physically to become resilient individuals. At the same time, inside the artisan couple's home, they are visited by 2 strangers who are apparently sent by Brax to kill Chris. Similar to what happened to the late Edie the other day, they suddenly intimidate the wife to lure Chris into the house.
Christian!
Again.
But Chris intervenes. Not wanting to suffer the same fate, the bald man takes the couple hostage and intends to escape. However, it is in vain because Chris manages to stop him and pull him out of the car. Using the belt he is wearing, Chris manages to subdue the bald man with little resistance. It is in the last moments of his life that Chris pressures the bald man to talk about who sent him. The bald man explains that he was only paid by a stranger to kill Chris and Dana without being told the reason. The bald man never even met the person who assigned him the task directly. Quickly, Chris rushes to the apartment to save Dana. On the way, he contacts Justin and asks her to immediately change his identity, including securing all data related to Chris. And sure enough, upon arrival at the apartment, Chris finds several suspicious men suddenly entering Dana's room. After dealing with the thugs, Chris takes Dana to his shop house to retrieve some items, such as a pistol and a stack of money. Curiosity forces Dana to sneak into the truck and see firsthand all the contents inside. When she questions Chris about his real job, Chris simply replies that Dana doesn't need to know more and immediately takes her away from there. Medina herself has just received a report from the investigation officer regarding the Solomon Grundy rhyme, which turns out to be an 18th century children's nursery rhyme. However, based on the way the rhyme was delivered, the officer assumes the speaker might be under stress or suffering severe trauma. It is even possible that the speaker is someone suffering from a rare disorder.
To identify visually. Lack of eye contact, face, protruding ears, poor muscle duct to you.
Thanks.
Late at night, Medina continues her investigation by gathering information on several accountants who earn over $1,000 per year, an amount that is impossible to achieve even for a professional accountant. With the help of an FBI colleague, the name Christian Wolff, or Chris, is finally obtained. He intentionally spreads his earnings across 3 different companies to cover his tracks.
Easy accounting. Everyone. Managing partner, Christian Wolff.
Medina reports her findings to King. Although not well received, Medina tries to convince King that it is all just a diversion. As a result, they decide to continue the investigation.
Well, what if he's taking other means of payment?
Pack a bag, we're going to Chicago.
This is where Chris and Dana are now, staying in a 7-star hotel, considered the safest place for them at the moment. After sharing their backgrounds and experiences, Chris suddenly realizes Rita, the manager, might be involved and targeted by the officials. So he decides to go check on her. Chris is too late, because Brax has already raided Rita's house and just left. Brax, realizing he's being followed, manages to escape and deceive Chris with a few shots fired. Chris then finds Rita lying dead. Upon arriving at the hotel, Chris finds Dana still there and sound asleep. Not wanting to involve anyone else in his work, Chris writes a letter for Dana to read when she wakes up and leaves her alone in the hotel. At the same time, King and the FBI team are at Chris's house to make an arrest. Besides finding evidence, a utility knife and a dented aluminum thermos, they are also shocked by the unusual security system for an accountant's home, CCTV installed at every point, and heavy weaponry also prepared. Medina becomes even more certain that Chris is the accountant they have been looking for all along.
Michelle, I will.
The team is ordered to leave to make a report, and Medina will wait here until Chris returns. It is at this moment that King finally tells the whole story about the accountant.
Only you tell me, Medina. Men kill each other for any...
10 years ago, more precisely during the incident in the bar, the man held at gunpoint was King himself. He was almost the 10th victim killed by the accountant after the 9 previous gangsters. But perhaps due to another plan, the accountant let him live.
Why he let me live, I didn't know.
This is answered when King intends to retire from his position as a financial agent. At that time, Justin contacted him on Chris's orders to establish a collaboration. Since King successfully handled various cases leaked to him by Chris, his reputation skyrocketed, and King was appointed as the director of the Department of the Treasury. Not only that, the surprise is that King also once met Francis, the astute accountant of the gangsters. At that time, Francis was used as an informant to expose the secrets of the gangsters who were once his clients. Unfortunately, government protection did not apply after Francis was released, so tortured to death.
Tortured to death.
Finally, Francis died cruelly at the hands of the gangsters' henchmen. Meanwhile, Chris, who was still in prison, managed to escape after subduing the guard with the thermos. From this, it can be concluded that the massacre Chris carried out in the bar 10 years ago was a form of revenge for the death of Francis, who had become his teacher and second father.
Funeral home. Whose wake?
Apart from Chris's status as a forensic accountant for the most wanted criminal groups, he apparently has a noble purpose by continuing to assist the law enforcement carried out by King. Even the investigation Medina is currently conducting is Chris's plan to involve her in uncovering the mastermind behind the living robotics scandal.
Believe me, I wrestle with the same decision. But when I got that first call...
Shifting to another location, while Brax is preparing security at a client's house, we finally discover who Brax works for, Lamar. Brax is tasked with eliminating people who are starting to sniff out the embezzlement of shares in his company, as happened to Eddie and Rita. Even now, Lamar is targeting Chris because he has interfered too much. Apparently, Chris has already prepared an attack from a distance, successfully taking down several enemies guarding outside, then entering and eliminating the guards inside. Even though he was shot in the leg, it didn't make Chris retreat one bit, and he became even more brutal, to the point of overwhelming Brax and his men. While watching the CCTV, Brax accidentally hears the Solomon Grundy rhyme that Chris usually says to keep his mind focused. Brax, intrigued, dares to kill his own colleague just to meet the target directly.
Stand down! Fuck off!
The fact is that Brax, who has been hunting Chris all this time, is none other than Braxton, his own younger brother. Instead of becoming a better person, after more than a decade apart, Braxton has dedicated the rest of his life to being a ruthless hitman without considering morality or humanity.
I need to finish.
You're gonna give me an answer. Why would you and Pop go to that funeral?
There is a family drama when Braxton blames Chris for their father's death. This does not last long after Chris explains what really happened. He also apologizes for not being able to properly look after Braxton all this time. However, he promises to meet him again soon after all this work is finished.
You wonder where I was?
I knew where you were. I just wanted you to be safe.
After a brief fight and a rather difficult conversation, Lamar arrives, trying to defend himself with his rotten excuses. But this does not affect Chris's firm decision, which is...
You even know what that's like?
Yes, I do.
The next day, Medina and the FBI immediately hold a press conference regarding the case they successfully handled. Medina explains that her success in uncovering the living robotics scandal is thanks to the guidance of King, her boss, including the important role of two mysterious figures, Chris and Justin.
He was just like our other two. He was a happy baby. Now he rarely speaks. It's like...
So, who is Justin, who has been helping Chris all this time? Well, it turns out she is the little girl who is the daughter of the Neuro Center manager from the beginning of the movie. Thanks to the donations contributed by Chris, Justin, with all her limitations, has transformed into the most important figure behind Chris's journey all this time. Armed with a digital translator application and sophisticated computer equipment, Justin will continue to oversee Chris's journey until the end.
I'll say they're generous. That. But that woman...
Hello, Dreamboat. Shall we chat?
At the same time, Dana receives a package, a poster painting of dogs playing poker, a type of gambling game she once enjoyed. But it turns out, the painting is only a cover for something far more valuable. Chris intentionally gifts her the Pollock painting as a keepsake for Dana. As for Chris himself, he remains with his title as the forensic accountant, who is currently moving his caravan truck to carry out his next mission. The main moral of this film is essentially to stop judging a book by its cover, and realize that what makes you different is often your biggest strength. The film really drives home the point that unique neurotypes, like Christian Wolff's Asperger's, shouldn't be seen as a limitation. Instead, they give him his incredible genius and focus. On top of that, it explores this fascinating moral gray area. He's a highly skilled killer and money launderer, but he only uses those skills to deliver justice where the system has failed, punishing corporate bad guys and protecting the weak. So, it ultimately asks us to reconsider what good and bad really mean, especially when strong family bonds are driving someone to act as an unconventional vigilante. I'm Jack on behalf of the whole crew. Thanks for tuning in and catch you in the next one. Adios.